Have you ever felt like your body is trying to tell you something, but you just can't seem to crack the code? Autoimmune diseases can feel like this big, unsolvable medical mystery. But here's the thing, the clues are often right there in front of us. So let's dive in and learn how to become a detective for our own health.
It's just so incredibly frustrating, right? You know deep down something is wrong. You feel it every single day. But maybe you've been told your symptoms are just stress, or worse, that you're imagining it.
Well, let's get one thing straight. Your symptoms are absolutely real. And they're not just random feelings. They are vital pieces of evidence. Think of this explainer as your guide to finally understanding those signals your body is sending out.
So what exactly are we dealing with here? At its core, an autoimmune disease is basically a case of mistaken identity. Your immune system, which is supposed to be your personal bodyguard, gets confused and starts attacking your own healthy cells. This causes inflammation that can really wreak havoc from head to toe.
And this is where the plot thickens. The mystery gets so complicated because those early clues are often kind of vague and can pop up all over your body. That's why they get misdiagnosed or dismissed so frequently. And it's a huge hurdle for anyone who's just trying to get some answers. All right, let's start with the first set of clues. I want you to think of these as your body's system-wide alarm bells. They're often the first things to show up, but they're also, ironically, the easiest to overlook. First up, fatigue. And I'm not talking about that, ooh, it was a long week, I need a nap kind of tired. Nope, this is a bone-deep, can't get out of bed kind of exhaustion. It's on a completely different level. The keywords here are profound and persistent. This is a fatigue that's so deep, it doesn't matter how much you sleep, you never feel rested. It gets in the way of your ability to function, to think, to live your life. And that makes it a major, major clue for conditions like lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. Next up, brain fog. Ever have those days where you feel like you're walking through a thick mental haze? Yeah, that's not just one of those days. The systemic inflammation we talked about can literally affect your brain, messing with your memory, your focus, and just your ability to think clearly. Another really key clue is a fever that you just can't seem to shake. It's usually not super high like you get with the flu, but it's stubborn, and popping some Tylenol or Advil does absolutely nothing. That's a sign your immune system is just stuck in overdrive, constantly generating heat. Okay, let's move on to our next set of clues. And these are the ones that are literally hiding in plain sight. Seriously, your skin, hair, and nails can act like a billboard, showing the world what's really happening on the inside. And these clues can look so different from person to person. For example, that classic butterfly rash you see across the nose and cheeks, that's a textbook sign of lupus. But it could also be a sudden sensitivity to the sun, or finding patches of hair falling out, or even seeing weird little pits or ridges in your fingernails. All of these can point towards specific autoimmune conditions. Okay, this is a really important distinction to make, because not all skin conditions are created equal. Eczema, for instance, is usually just a localized skin issue. But psoriasis, with those dry, silvery white patches, that's a full-blown autoimmune disease. It's a sign of that systemic inflammation we've been talking about, and that's why it's such a critical clue. Now for a very specific and honestly pretty dramatic clue, Raynaud's phenomenon. This is wild. It's when your fingers or toes suddenly change color when you get cold or stressed. They can turn white, then blue, then red. It's a clear sign of vascular spasms and can be a major red flag for conditions like scleroderma or lupus. Okay, so we've looked at the clues on the surface. Now, let's go a little deeper and investigate the internal clues, those aches and pains that are often totally invisible to everyone but you. So let me ask you this. How do you feel when you first wake up? I mean, sure, everyone's a little stiff in the morning, but if that stiffness in your joints is really severe and it lasts for more than half an hour, well, that's not just normal aging. That points to inflammatory arthritis, like you'd see in rheumatoid arthritis. Progressive muscle weakness is another one of those subtle but really serious signs. We're not talking about being sore after a tough workout. We're talking about when simple, everyday tasks, like combing your hair or just getting up from a chair, suddenly feel incredibly difficult. This can point to myositis, which is where the immune system actually attacks your muscles. And remember, these clues can show up anywhere. It might be a weird tingling in your hands and feet, or intensely dry eyes and mouth, which is a hallmark of Sjogren's syndrome, or even chronic gut problems like you see in Crohn's.
The key is that these often aren't separate, unrelated problems. They're all potential pieces of one big systemic puzzle. 0. What does that mean? Well, in some autoimmune conditions, like lupus, the immune system can go after blood cells so aggressively that a person's platelet count, which you absolutely need for your blood to clot, can drop all the way down to 0. That's a life-threatening emergency, and it just highlights how incredibly serious these conditions can be.
So, we've gathered all this evidence, the fatigue, the rashes, the pain. Now, how in the world do we put it all together to actually solve the puzzle?
Well, for so many people, the path to a diagnosis is a long, winding, and frustrating road, just like you see here. You might bounce from specialist to specialist and get no clear answers. This is an incredibly common experience, but it's so important not to give up hope. And this is where the hero of our story comes in, the rheumatologist. These doctors are the true medical detectives. They're the ones trained to take all these seemingly unrelated clues from all over the body and piece them together to finally see the big picture.
So after all this, what are the big takeaways? First and foremost, trust your gut. Your symptoms are real. Second, look for patterns. It's the constellation of symptoms that tells the story, not just one isolated thing. And most importantly, you have to be your own biggest advocate. Getting answers early can change everything.
By understanding these early warning signs, you're not just a passenger on this journey anymore. You're in the driver's seat, actively seeking answers. You now have a framework for understanding your body's language. So the only question left is, are you ready to listen?
Hi there, forest friend. Thanks for clicking on our video. We're so happy you're here. Before we jump in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends.